And Mr. Jones is on though, right?
He is, and I'm going to change the view so that you can see. Yeah.
There it is.
And we are recording and.
We are
Unmuted.
recording now.
Yes, sir.
Very nice. Welcome. It is 5:35, and I am calling to order 35 minutes late. A Finance and Budget Committee meeting of the Children's Services Council of Leon County. Ms. McPhail, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Hannah, Mr. Jones,
You're on mute.
you are still muted, Mr. Jones.
We see you.
We see you but don't hear you.
Mr. Jones?
Oh, fuck.
Oh,
You're unmuted now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Mitchell,
I am here.
wonderful. You have almost a quorum.
Okay, let me explain for anyone who is listening. I am doing my best to come up with rhyming words, but I'm failing. So this is a meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee. As part of the rules of the Children's Services Council, we need a physical quorum present to allow to allow someone who is not physically present to be allowed to vote. Unfortunately, that requires people to be physically here. Both Mr. Hannah and Chair Darrell Jones are attending a conference, so cannot be here physically. Therefore, we don't have a quorum, so there will be no official action taken in terms of a vote. However, we do have items on the agenda that we would like to discuss, and this will sort of fall more into a workshop style meeting where no official vote will be taken, but we can discuss it. It is a public meeting, and again, no vote will be taken, but we could discuss, and items can be moved forward to the full council at its next meeting. With that, I'm not going to call for an approval of the agenda because, well, you're just going to have to accept the agenda because there's no vote. I would like to know, though, Ms. McPhail, is there public comment?
There's no public comment.
Very nice. The first item on the agenda of substance is a draft settlement agreement with Scientia, a vendor that we used in the summer of 2023. 2023, yes. I know that Mr. Springer and Mr. Rowe have been working with with Scientia on a settlement, and I thought it'd be a good idea for, I don't know which one of you wants to talk about it, Mr. Springer, about where we are, how we got to where we are, and again, this is a vote that will be brought to the full council at our meeting in 2 more weeks, right before Christmas.
Right, I'd be happy to
Springer, thank you.
address that. Yes, thank you. So briefly, the history is there was a dispute that came to legal attention that's been covered at 2 previous full council meetings. There was a draft complaint that came to this committee, went back to the council. I was not at the last full council meeting, but the takeaway I got from that was rather than pursuing the litigation path, see if we can resolve this. So the job was to put down the complaint and draft a settlement agreement. So in the package, the agenda package is that draft settlement agreement, which is simpler than the complaint because settlement agreements have a pretty standard form, lay out the background, and then they say, look, rather than litigate, we want to settle. And the settlement is expressed in terms of an overall payment amount of $59,400. This is a paragraph 2 on page 2. And then there's the monthly installment plan for 36 monthly payments, and the process for those payments. And then in exchange for that, each party releases all the claims that they had under the previous, like the grant agreement documents. So that release means there's no more fighting over the grant agreement. Everything from here forward would be based on this settlement agreement. So if there was a dispute, and there's really not much for the council to do in terms of performance except to receive payment. So the consideration for releasing the claim and not pursuing the lawsuit would be the 36 monthly payments. So that process would be governed by this agreement. So the council's not releasing claims under this agreement. If this agreement were to be breached, this is a new agreement in addition to the old grant agreement. So if this agreement were to be breached, the council would be in a position of going in if they breach, could sue for breach of the settlement agreement. And then there's some standard kind of boilerplate language toward the end of this that's typical in settlement agreements. So this is very simple document, but the business terms primarily would be, I guess, for the committee's consideration is the settlement amount and the payment installment amount. And I just took that from communications with the vendor that we had, leading up to the last full council meetings. And that's what led to this draft.
Let's just can I just ask one quick question? I read the settlement agreement in terms of any sort of statute of limitations. Like we enter into a settlement agreement for $59,400 that is owed to us for the last year and a half. I want to make sure that this 3-year window, we're not jeopardizing. Let's say in month 20 out of 36, IENTA decides, you know what, we don't want to pay anymore. Have we sort of cooked our own goose because it's 38 months since we have pointed out our discrepancy? Is there any fear that could happen?
No, because if you were to have a breach of contract claim, it would be a bid contract.
Yes, sir.
And the statute of limitations on a contract claim is 5 years, and it's measured from the date of the breach, not the date of the agreement. So that would not be a risk, a legal risk.
Ms. McPhail, I because Mr. Jones is on the line, I have a hard time knowing when someone is trying to raise their hand. So Mr. Jones, just blurt out if you've got a question, and I'm going to try to always recognize you. If you don't say anything, it just means you don't have a question. Mr. Johnson?
That's fine.
I just had one quick question about, there doesn't appear to be any default and cure in this agreement. So that means that if you miss a payment, there isn't any default and cure over it. So you're in breach in essence if you miss the payment.
Yes. Yeah. So a default and cure would be before there's a breach, there's an opportunity. Hey, you're in breach. You have a chance
You've got a week to
cure
do
it
or something. And it also, because some of that, I believe I saw in here where you've recommended that the payments be set up on ACH to come into us. So assumedly that starts to narrow down what the real impact or the real reasons for a breach might be related to timely payment. It just seems reasonable to have some extraordinary measure provision in there, not with a long duration, just so that we don't run into an automatic breach in this because something happened that we quickly need to sort out. The payment didn't hit. I don't know if it's a week. I don't know if it's, but on the flip side of that, I want to avoid what we got into where this ping pong back and forth between the full council and the finance committee. And to me is when we reach an agreement on this and it comes before the council, I don't think it ever needs to see the light of the finance committee again. It's just,
Yeah.
this is the it.
I think Mr. Johnson makes a good point. As long as the fault, where there is a, sort of human error isn't a human error on the side of Scientia. Because and this is, again, we're not taking a vote here today for the full council to consider, but I have zero patience. I'm upset, gentlemen, that there isn't a penalty in here. This is a 4.5-year, zero interest loan of $60,000 that this council is giving to 2 Leon County residents, but not to any other one. I find it offensive that there is no penalty that's been offered. I'm going to live with it because the people of Leon County deserve their money back. But so no exception if they mess up. But if there's human error and the bank, something happens, I think Mr. Johnson raises a really good point. We don't, I don't want something bad to happen to them that was not their fault.
Yeah, so rather than a notice, an opportunity to cure, which just creates more work on your,
Yeah.
and what comes to mind would be a boilerplate like forbearance clause. If we forbear pursuing, and then it would be in your judgment, but you don't have to do anything. Just, you can decide, okay, we're not going to see this time, you get an explanation, we get it, just, get it to us by tomorrow or something.
Right.
So that's probably the language to add that would create no additional work on your part, but still give you that flexibility.
Mr. Jones, do you have any comments on this?
No, sir, I'm just listening to the conversation.
Thank you. Okay, so that is, I think Mr. Johnson's suggestion is a great one. And certainly it would not be harmful. I feel certain that the folks from Scientia would be very comfortable with it, that we would put it in whatever we bring to the full council. And certainly the council could take it out if they chose at that point, but I cannot imagine that they would.
I do have a question. Hey. I want to make sure that whatever that forbearance language is, that we're talking a matter of days. I just want to ensure that we're not talking about we have to skip a month because something happened.
Yeah, and I would say it's not even that, because
Okay.
then you don't want to create that exception process. Basically, the standard language is, look, if we don't exercise a right, if we forbear exercising a right under this, we still have that right and we can exercise it any other time. It just gives you enough wiggle room so you're not saying, well, hey, you went 3 months and you extended the payment a week. Now the deal is we get an extra week.
Right.
No, it's the deal is still the deal, and that's the standard language. So you don't want to create exception processes or 10-day notice.
A massive disruption of the financial world, and the ACH doesn't go through, or let's say they use Bank of America and Bank of America has a massive hiccup and the payment doesn't go through. Not Scientia's fault,
Right.
not our fault, just sort of a.
And that gives you the flexibility without being prejudiced. It's like,
Right.
okay, we were lenient now, but you're not giving away or weakening the agreement just because you're lenient in a situation. like that.
That's what that was.
Right.
My intention.
Yeah, so that would be the way.
It's a great idea. Okay.
Hello,
Hey, Mr. Jones, go ahead.
Ms. Green and Mr. Rowe, and you all's negotiations with them. There's no way that the work can be done
So I think
for
that's,
the best. Are we too far beyond that? Are they incapable of doing the work?
we are too far beyond that from a staffing issue, because now
Okay.
we
No
would have to
problem.
figure out how to try to manage that.
Okay. No problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm certainly want to afford you guys the ability to say anything. And we did have a public comment, but this is a flexible meeting because there are no votes being taken. So if you guys want to say something, feel free to.
No.
Okay, the podium's all yours if you like.
If you would like, please, when you approach the podium, make sure that you state your whole name and your address for the record.
Okay.
Thank you.
Curry Henry, I'll defer on the address, but safety reasons, but so I want to say that we appreciate the council taking the time to work with us on this, and we are fully committed to actually having this implemented. We've actually gone ahead and taken the steps to ensure that we live to our end of the agreement. So one thing I can tell you, rest assured, there won't be an issue on our end. So if there's any problems, we can always bring something in person, if that's the case, as a backup, but we've already made provisions going forward. So we are looking forward to having this and just moving forward. So there won't be any issues on our end, so I can assure you that.
Great.
And we will be around for the next century, not just the next 5 years. So
Thank you for coming, by the way.
thank you for having us.
All right. Without, unless there's any more comments or ideas, let's go to the next item, which is now, is this you, Mr. Rowe, or back to Mr. Springer? Mr. Springer, by the way, thank you. I mean, thank you.
Welcome.
Job well done. Mr. Rowe, the Live Local Act.
Very good. Thank you, sir. In 2023, the state legislature adopted what's commonly known as the Live Local Act. The idea behind the Live Local Act was to remove some of the developmental delays, improving the development process for affordable housing. Legislature recognized that we have a shortage of affordable housing and tried to basically smooth the path for actually getting that type of housing developed. One of the provisions of the Live Local Act is basically an incentive for developers. It gives them a break on the property taxes that would otherwise be due for the property based on the property having a certain minimum number of essentially affordable units. The unit types are distinguished in the act based on area median income. If you have your units are less than 80% of the area median income, then those units are fully exempt from paying the property tax. If the units are between 80 and 120%, the so-called middle market, then you receive a substantial discount on the ad valorem property taxes you would otherwise have to pay as the owner of an affordable housing complex, but not complete. You pay something. This is the middle market. This past year, the state legislature revised the Live Local Act to provide an option for local government entities that impose property taxes, like CSC Leon, like Leon FNB, like City of Tallahassee, where they can basically opt out of the exemption. The board knows that its annual revenue stream is derived from the imposition of ad valorem taxes. And the rate of ad valorem taxes measured in millage that the board knows from its deliberations over the budget adoption process is basically measured against the total taxable value in the county as reported by the county property appraiser. One of the county property appraisers' duties each year is to report the taxable value to the taxing authority. So the taxing authority can basically figure out what their budget is going to be, compare it to the total taxable value of property, and then figure out what from that, do the simple math to find out, okay, our proposed millage rate is 3.5 or 0.35 in order to generate our budget for the year. For properties that are exempted, such as those affordable housing complexes based on the Live Local Act, the value is taken out of the total taxable value reported by the property appraiser, essentially. So the net impact to taxing authorities is that in order to generate the same amount of revenue based on this exemption, you have to charge a higher millage rate. So the amount of the increased millage rate is a function of how much in value is associated countywide with affordable housing complexes. It might be negligible. It might mean an increase between 0.3509 mils up to 0.36 mils, or it could be significant. I included in your materials a rough example of the calculations just so you can see how the local act may impact the millage rate imposed by CSC Leon. In light of the fact that there is this new ability to opt out, I wanted to bring it to the attention of the committee so that opting out can be discussed by the whole governing council at its meeting. If the governing council determines to opt out, it has to do so by adopting a resolution expressing its intent to opt out. That resolution is then provided to the property appraiser. so that the property appraiser is made aware of the determination. The meeting at which that opt-out resolution is considered, which again, 2 weeks from now, has to be noticed. It requires notice in the newspaper. So in order to get that notice done in time for the meeting, sometime within the next couple of days, we have to get the notice published. And you can see again in your packet, there's both a copy of the draft resolution I put together opting out, and it's very short. It contains a certain amount of information on the required legislative findings that have to be made in order to opt out. And those legislative findings are primarily that based on statistical information promulgated by the Schimberg Center, affiliated with the University of Florida, the data and statistics indicate that there is not currently a shortage of affordable housing in the county. And for Leon County, the Schimberg Center has determined that there is no shortage. That is the premise upon which you can determine to opt out, and you have to make a finding to that effect. So I prepared a resolution that includes that finding. It basically specifies that CSC Leon is opting out. The resolution has to be adopted by the end of this calendar year in order for it to take effect next year. And so that's the purpose of presenting it here today. There's some urgency to get the resolution done by the full governing council at its next meeting, and again, noticing that meeting according to the statutory requirement.
Mr. Rowe, I read the backup, and I struggled a bit. I appreciate the fact that a determination has been made that we don't have a shortage of affordable housing. I'm sure they're very smart people. Actually, it's the University of Florida. No offense, but anyway, so I'm not really sure that that's possible. But let's say they're really smart people at the University of Florida. I'm kidding, we represent that. They're a bunch of brilliant people. I think there is a shortage of affordable housing, and I think that the folks, many of the folks that the Children's Services Council serves are folks who are struggling with the cost of housing. I don't want to do anything that transfers a burden to someone renting an apartment that qualifies as affordable housing in Leon County by imposing a tax that no other local government is imposing, so that we sort of break even, knowing that even when we rolled back our millage rate a year ago, we still collected 600,000 more than we anticipated. So the opt out, that's so that I understand this. If we just were like, hey, look, if you're in affordable housing and you meet these demographics, or you're serving this demographic, continue to get your tax break. You don't need to raise the monthly rent to try to, break even. Would we be voting for opt-out, or we just leave things as it is?
If you don't take any action as the governing council, you don't adopt this resolution, then they would continue to get the exemption without any further action.
Okay.
And if I may add some additional information, the reason why I discussed this with Mr. Rowe is because, of course, it came up in our membership organization, in fact, so that CSCs across the state were considering what action they would take. There is one CSC that decided to pass a resolution. It's going to their December meeting to opt out of the exemption. However, I have been notified by the city and the county, because they have the ability to do that. They are not going to take action on this.
Leon County and Tallahassee.
Leon County and City of Tallahassee. I think that the school board has the same option.
I think so.
And I had planned on asking Superintendent Hannah if they had discussed it. Now, at the last school board meeting that I attended, they didn't. It was like.
Is Mr. Jones still on?
Mr. Jones had some.
Okay.
So I was just going to ask them to see if they took action, but our local governments here are not going to do it.
So recognizing that the finance committee can't vote, we can't fit. Can we notice? I want to make sure that look, I'm a no. okay, but I'm 1 out of 9 votes. So can we notice that the resolution is going to be considered to meet the legal requirement of a 2 weeks notice and the council vote no?
Yes, you can.
That's what
You
we
can
do.
provide the notice, so you basically set up a placeholder for the full governing council to determine. However, if you don't publish the notice,
You can't vote on it. Well, again, the maniacal side of me is like, well, publish, right? I win. I happen to think that I know my fellow council members and I well enough to know that they're gonna vote no, but I don't want, what do you think, Mr. Johnson?
Well, I want to make sure I understand it. So I may not be using the right terms, but if I look at my tax bill and we've talked about the county, we've talked about the city, we've talked, and there's Leon County Public Schools, there's fire and water, fire services fee, there's water management assessment, and there's us. So do each of the individual component taxing authorities, are they facing this? They can opt out of live local.
that's right.
Okay.
Up to the individual taxing authorities.
So, and then if I then go over to your example, and you say we're 8.8 million on 25 billion, so our millage rate currently is 3.52. Is the second example there, or parenthetical 2 there, does that say if we opt out?
Yes, sir. That's meant to basically give a very rough, using purely illustrative numbers, what the impact would be on the millage if you determine to.
So it seems to me in your example that there's a mechanism to be held whole, that your millage rate then goes up to keep you generating the same dollar amount?
Yes, the way that the math works is that in order to arrive at the same annual revenue stream, your millage will have to go up. How much it goes up is
It
entirely.
depends on what that exemption of the property taxes associated with those properties that qualify for the 80%.
And bear in mind, there is already in any given community a fair number of properties that are exempt from the payment of local property taxes anyway. Nonprofits are generally exempt. The local government, state, federal owned property is exempt. Rights of way, things of that nature are taxed anyway. So this is just another exempt property. When taken as a whole, it could have an impact on your millage rate.
Okay.
Without knowing what the value of the affordable housing is across the county, it's difficult. That's the big.
But from a procedural standpoint, we've already collected taxes. I mean, Dino will tell you, we've already collected, the lion's share come in at the beginning of November. So what do we send out a new notice? And
No, it would be
For
for
next
the
year.
it would be for the next term cycle.
So, right, so then we can make a determination at that point, oh my God, we're starving over here at the Children's Services Council and we need it.
For 2026.
For 2026.
Right.
Yes, for 2026, you have to do the opt-out before the end of this
But
year.
my point is, exclude those. If we feel like we're starving and we need to raise the millage rate, we can raise the millage rate and still exclude those serving a community who need affordable housing.
And then also keep in mind that in the OASIS platform, once that taxable value has been determined, so we get the preliminary on June 1, we get the final on July 1. The July 1 taxable value that would be used for us is then inserted into the formula, and it tells us what the rollback rate is to generate what we generated this year. So if we, if we don't do anything, the assumption is that with those exemptions from those properties, you're gonna see the rollback rate go up just a little bit.
Exactly. But that's a determination we can make next year again, but we will be we'll continue to exempt those those entities that serve. And we would ask those who aren't exempted if we wanted to raise the exact same amount of money or however we wanted to look at this, we would base it on those property owners that were not exempt from paying taxes.
And then the other piece is, we don't know if this is $5,000, $20,000. $50,000.
Again, I think we need to, as a courtesy to the other council members who may have differing views from Mr. Johnson and I think we have to notice it, but I am such a big fan. I mean, I think, who are we? Yeah, we're providing services to you. And oh, by the way, I mean, I know it's only a few cents here and a few cents there, but I think.
And I confirmed with council that we don't have to have a council vote to do the notice. We can just do the notice.
I think that's a good idea to do the notice so that we can say, no, thank you. But again, it may be 7-2 against the two of us. Mr. Johnson.
Given that feedback, is there any modification in your draft resolution that needs to happen? Originally, I think the anticipation was that we would be taking a vote on this matter as the Finance and Budget Committee, in some way giving you authority to notice the resolution. That I just want to make sure that we've got the language here
What I typically
such
do,
that we are pushing this to the full, we're notifying, we're doing the public notice that the full council will take this issue up at their January 9th or December 19th meeting.
yes, for not only for the notice purposes, but also for purposes of formulating perhaps a recommendation. You can't vote on a recommendation because we don't have the necessary quorum, but what saith the Finance and Budget Committee to the full governing council, we recommend opting out or not.
Okay.
Can't make that, but what I might do with the resolution is just include a short provision that basically says, we hereby ratify and confirm the prior provision of notice for purposes of this resolution. Okay. A record of full council consent to the notice.
And then on the agenda for the council meeting, it will say consideration of the resolution. General counsel will present that resolution. Chair will ask for public comment and then, or ask for a motion. And if we don't get a motion, it dies.
Okay, so that's what, that was really what my question is. How do I kill this damn thing? And then the way to kill it is
No
motion.
No motion.
If the chair asks for a motion and there isn't one, it dies. If there is a motion and there's no second, it dies. If there is a second, we do public comment, you have your discussion, take a vote.
We still
It
have to do
fails.
public comment though.
No, you only have to do public comment if you get a motion approved.
But if we've noticed this, we still have to take. I just in abundance of caution, we've noticed that
Yeah, I mean, you
an
you
agenda
can.
item. I mean, there may be people out there who say, no, I want you to have
Yeah,
this
you
money, you
can.
must take it. Yeah,
And
Yeah,
you
we
can
received
choose to do the public comment before you guys
right.
talk about it really, but those are the different ways that it would go.
And the chair will know, the chair can say, if I get no motion and no second, this dies. Having said that, I want to open it up to public comment. And I'm guessing we're not going to have any public comments supportive of it. Please tax me more. I'm not, well, Mr. Steen, wherever you are, come in with your nickels, but, okay.
We also have a motion to table it indefinitely.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. So there are different ways that it can be.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I think, unless you want to hang out for the variance summary of our budget, you guys probably leave if you would like, although stay, enjoy the festivities.
Thank you. I came from Clearwater, court appearance this morning. I just as soon go home.
Quite the compelling representation of Christmas.
I really mean what I say. I know that was a thing that you went through, but I appreciate you
Happy to help.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Talk soon.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Okay. So. Bugs shot. I'm actually really excited about this. Mr. Grayson, I think I'm gonna turn this over. I don't know who to turn it over to. I'm gonna sit back and through osmosis, soak in a whole bunch of smarts from, Dina and John and you, Brent. But do you want to start it, Brent? Do you?
Well, I'd like to hear
Okay,
what they put before us and then
all right.
kind of comment from there.
Great. Good evening, everyone. The first item here is the balance sheet. It shows our assets, which are operating account, money market account, and the Florida class accounts that have been split out as designated. We have this money in and money out in bill.com. And that shows us our total checking and savings, security deposits, and our total assets of 11.4 million. Under accounts payable, you'll see the first item at a negative 28. We should never have a negative 28 on our balance sheet. But the way bill.com works is when that money has been taken out of our account and before it goes out to pay a vendor, it's negative. It turns over after it gets paid. So that's an anomaly that we, I think, are just going to have to deal with. But it clears itself out. Got the other current liabilities. And then we have the equity portion, which is the net income and unrestricted net assets. I'm working on developing a way to show this as our restricted funds. I would like to get some input and guidance from our auditors when they come in as exactly how to show it and how to adjust it on a monthly basis. This number changes every month, how much is actually restricted for programming and what is actually unrestricted. So I'm working on that. Okay. The next report is the income expense budget to actual. It shows last fiscal year, October through September 24, shows the different income and expense categories and the budgeted amount. And I apologize, this probably should be landscape so that the first two, so it's 2 pages and the pages aren't split like this, but this is how it is this time. So you can look at that, and if there are any questions that can be answered here, I will endeavor to do so.
So we can, I can, you're saying this is kind of how it should look,
The
right?
first 2 go
Yes.
1 up and 1 down. And then the next 2, you got front and back.
Oh.
You got front and back.
Yes.
Yeah, you have it right.
Okay.
If they're front and back, they go side by side, and then you turn them over, they go side by side.
So it's page 13 next to 15.
Oh,
If you're looking at this, and then 14 next to 16, or 16, yeah, yes.
And I do apologize, I'll make a mental note that in the future that this report and also that monthly report are done landscaping or squeezed in to 1 page wide.
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Grayson. Now I'm with you. And you're right, it
Oh,
makes
yeah,
it a lot
exactly.
easier to see.
I looked at it on the computer and did it perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
yeah, I could see it on the computer perfectly, so I'm looking at it now and
I think it's when we hit to print, because it was a different paper size.
that's
but
what happened.
we'll work on that. That's in
Yep.
IT logistics.
I think that's it for the report. The last report I'm gonna defer to.
Because we don't ever get to do this, do you mind if we just kind of go through these? It's been a minute, it may have been a year since you, Dina, and I went through each of these categories. I just want to make, and we have amended them. They're all new categories. I mean, everything is as it's supposed to be, right, Dina? Okay. We called things, we put them in the right bucket, and this is the new and improved, done correctly. Yes,
Yes.
okay. Dina, I don't know if you want to walk us through it. John, you want to walk us through it?
I will.
Okay.
So income, first line, we have ad valorem proceeds and interest. You see that, as I address them, I'm gonna address some of the, variances. So the income is spot on. It's 101 for 102%. So it's 1.8% over. The interest was not, we budgeted 152 and it was 469. Some of that change was we changed our money to Florida class, which got us a higher interest rate, okay? Expense, compensation, employee benefits, you'll see health, no life, we budgeted, we didn't, payroll taxes, retirement contributions, salaries, and employee benefits, all right?
So again, just by category, we were pretty close to hitting our mark in terms of what we were budgeting.
That 98.8%, somebody's almost a genius on that.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it's just, I mean, there is interesting.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
You're in salaries, you're under budget. Yet in retirement contributions, we're over budget. So normally I would think that your retirement contributions from an employer perspective are based on a percentage of salaries in some case. So, and I may just not be familiar with the formulas for the retirement contributions, but those two don't.
That's a good observation. I don't know.
I would just note it. I don't want to get hung up on it today.
I do know that retirement contribution went up last year, but I don't know when it went up. But I will note that.
Yeah, so it went up as of October 1 of last year due to the legislature passing. And it could be that there are some retirement contributions in there that were done when a team member turned over, but should not have.
Don't know, but
Okay,
it
so we'll
means the
check
kind
out.
of thing that I was thinking about in variance analysis is just not absolute dollars and percentages. It's thinking through things that should have causal relationships, like if retirement contributions are a percentage of eligible salaries and salaries is under budget, I just would like to understand then why retirement contributions would be over budget on what would have been 402,460 of budgeted salary.
I understand.
That's all.
I understand your concern.
Keep trucking.
All right. Got contractual service, accounting, general counsel, staffing services.
Okay, let me pause there because this went back to that motion of we have this amount of money that we give the executive director, not to include accounting and legal services, but we were going to begin watching the budget for legal services. Help me as we end September 30th, 2024. This suggests that we did well as,
Under legal services?
yeah.
Yeah, so under legal services, we ended the year at 30,000. We had budgeted 75.
Make one comment, although we're providing this information and it says through September, we do have some bills that we may be still paying for the month of September. So it's not final,
Okay.
but it's not gonna go to 75.
I got you. Okay. That's, by the way, I commented on what a great job Mr. Springer did, and I'll comment on what a great job the firm did at keeping us under, because it hasn't always been like that. So Ms. Green, I thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
I know who stayed on it.
My
A
pleasure.
comment on this contractual service, other at the bottom. That should actually be in,
Staffing, so.
50, 20, 30. It should be under just staffing services. If you don't put it anywhere, it goes to other. So I need to move it back up, so
Right.
just.
So I'd like to apologize. I think that I might have pulled the wrong file, not the updated file.
Because I thought we had.
Yeah,
we
you
updated
just-
this, yeah.
My apologies.
Okay, we're still, so we just,
I'm not hanging,
We lost our admin specialist. so
I
we're trying
wanted,
to-
I wanted just to talk through this, especially because this is the first time that, and I can't do this with Mr. Johnson unless we're having this kind of meeting.
Right.
And I am going to take advantage of,
Do it.
yeah, your expertise, Mr. Johnson, and by going through these are things that kept me up at night, and so I'm glad we're having the conversation with you here. Okay.
contractual services, other than 50, 30, you got the audit, payroll processing, and disbursement processing, and I'm not exactly sure why. That would be the bill.com.
Yeah, that's why we added that line in. so
And I
I'm
don't
not
know
sure
why.
that didn't come
I don't
out.
know where I'm capturing that, but I will surely look and figure out what's going on there, all right?
Okay.
Collection fees, 155,000 for the ad valorem. You said it was 153, we collected more
You
money.
really have to like zoom in on that one.
I thought that was your favorite.
It is my very
We
favorite.
almost budgeted, we almost hit it.
Zero.
Oh,
Yeah, when it comes to zero, then it's my favorite.
And we've got trim and special district fee, all right? Communications, total budgeted 63, came in at 55. All right. Dues, budgeted 22, came at 21.
We just get a quick overview of what goes into that, or I guess we're a member of whatever the association of CSCs are, and
and that is that's a $20,000 membership per year. It also covers our annual meeting costs, so we don't pay for any registrations for that. The other $1265 are chamber memberships. And then we are also a member of UPHS and INI, the Institute for Nonprofit Innovation and Excellence. That covers our memberships, our dues.
That's how many chambers we're a member of in Little Leon County.
All right, that's another favorite.
Mhm.
All right. And then we have information technology, computers, equipment rental. Equipment rental is copier and
Copier, our view boards, and we're actually looking to possibly do something different.
all right, website maintenance, software and managed IT.
So our software and managed IT went so far over. So we
transitioned from doing it ourselves to doing it with help.
with help. So we have been trying to manage this ourselves. I thought we had budgeted enough in this last year. But maybe it was this year we made that adjustment, right? Because we now have a managed IT firm to help us with our security, help us with everything. They're managing our software, all of the things. And so we have to pay per person.
who's that vendor?
It is T3. They are a local vendor. So we corrected this in our budget for the current fiscal year.
And help me out, let me just pause for a second. And Ms. Green, help me, when we are over budget on any given category, do we have to go back and revise our budget for the
So normally I go back and usually around May,
this time?
I go back and do a budget amendment. And even with the budget amendment, we still, it just,
Talking about for the auditors, when they look at it, they want it to make sure that we have amended the budget? I don't know, I can't remember.
You
But
may-
something came up.
You brought it to the.
I
board.
did. They may say that we can bring an amendment to
They say
that,
we can't even after the year's
even after
over.
the year is over.
But it's some kind of
Bring an
threshold
amendment.
if you're over so many percentage.
But we've never hit,
Okay,
we've never hit whatever that, in fact, not only have we never hit it, we've never come close.
okay, very good.
To hitting it, to do an amendment.
Okay.
To even things out, because I think that it is an overall percentage
Very
that
good.
they're looking for.
All right.
And I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
and we actually have our entrance conference with Purvis Gray tomorrow morning.
Good, well, okay, I've talked to them about this, but I think you're right, we've never come close. It's certainly never been a concern that they've ever raised in the audit. I do remember though, because we were spending more on IT, and maybe that was when we were going from in-house to, contracted services, that the board, it came in as part of a financial report. And we moved money. Again, this was all part of that correction.
Right.
It was a series of things and, okay, all right.
Okay, insurance liability, D&O workers' comp, 17. Occupancy. Occupancy is a little bit high, and I think it's because of the FRC.
It is. It is
Okay.
because of the FRC, and we did our amendment before the FRC was approved. And so our rent increased when we did some of the improvements for the FRC, but keep in mind that the FRC is paying occupancy, so that is another thing that we are working on to show the split between what we're paying of the rent and what is being charged to them. And how we show that in there, because they do pay occupancy. We don't manage, we don't shoulder all of that.
Where are we in the cycle of renewal on the lease?
Ooh,
We just renewed it
we
last,
just renewed it,
yeah.
so we won't renew
So
it
is it
again.
a 3-year, 5-year?
5 years
It's a 5-year, and do you know what we're paying per
per
square?
square foot. We
I
are
don't need to
current,
know it now, I can
I can
follow up
tell you.
later, but.
and I can tell you, we're paying $20.16 per square foot.
Inclusive of utilities or outside?
Inclusive of utilities, janitorial,
So the landlord has the
electricity.
janitorial, and you're at 20
$20.16.
next issue.
And there's an escalation.
It escalates, it goes up, is it 75 cents per square foot
I
per
think it
year?
was, right, in the current version, it's about 73 cents.
73 cents per, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, office supplies and support. Nothing glaring there. Travel. Under budget, nothing that's glaring there. The same for miscellaneous, that award CSC awareness and other.
What's the CSC awareness? What was that?
So CSC awareness is when we get our, I'm saying Chotskys.
Right.
Just 'cause for some reason, that's the word that's in my head. There you go, yeah.
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 It is for,
It's our-
right.
Their branding
Promotion.
materials.
Our branding
Promotional
material,
item,
promotional item.
Okay.
Polyglot.
Awareness.
Okay, and miscellaneous. That's almost a catch-all for something that doesn't go in another account. And finally, the program expenditures. You'll see those down there. I'm understanding the instruction and when the money comes back in for different programs that's refunded, we're putting them. In the past, we've been applying them back to these expense accounts, okay? So if you gave somebody $1 million, but they gave back 100,000, that program looked like 900. Well, in the future, you say you want to see it up here in income,
Right.
refunded program income.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done for this fiscal year. All right?
So it's not gonna show in here,
Dina
But it
will
will
probably
show
track it
moving
here.
forward.
The only thing I would like is there's two different types of refunds. There's your typical refund, hey, we didn't spend all the money, we're sending you back, $11,320.16. And then there is a special kind of refund that is $59,400. I want that as a separate, so that we can begin to track and point to it for taxpayers, the settlement agreement that
You
we're.
want it
entering into.
settlement
Totally
agreement.
separate, yes,
Settlement agreement is good.
as income, but so that I can say to anyone who complains, we received $15,000 this year. We're at now $17,000 or whatever it is on that $59,400. I think it's really important. We spend a lot of time not picking on Scientia. I mean, I will pick on Scientia, believe me, but not to pick on them anymore. But to say to anyone else that's coming forward, we're serious about this.
I'm wondering, I'm looking and I'm wondering, we're probably, we're about to go undergo this audit. The auditors are probably gonna say, you've got a accounts receivable and you need to apply it to that. It needs to be on your balance sheet, so.
Right. Well, I know.
Instead of here, so you'll see a 54.9 and then you see it go down every month.
Hey, that's
Okay.
perfectly fine. I just need it marked
Okay.
as settlement agreement.
Okay. Very good.
I don't care. It's just really important that we recognize it and let's hope it never happens again, but
So with the approval of the settlement agreement expected to happen on December 19th, I would like to institute first payment on January 1.
yeah. Good.
Yeah, I think the agreement that they put forward is have this first of the month following the adoption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, thank you for going through these. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm down into the program investments and supports, and that's where I start to get a little cloudy over trying to understand what cash outflows have gone out against contractual commitments that the council has made.
Now, I think that next report and Dina running through it may answer that question or questions.
And while I start on this, I think it's important not just from a financial perspective to show what is a current disbursement on a larger obligation. And I'm happy to have that discussion with the auditors as well on that. If John, if I'm willing to sit on that.
Okay, great.
The other thing that's important to me is from a communication to the community perspective. And I think it's important when we're making investments of this size, and I'll raise it again at the council meeting, that we show them how we've intentionally begun to spend money against these areas and how many years we're making commitments and what dollars there are. So in one sense, it's a strategy articulation. It's that we put this forward and we're making these investments to meet these objectives. And I know I heard the superintendent mention that it's hard to keep up with, and I'll hold further comments, I guess, until Dina can walk me through this a little bit. But because we're making commitments that overlap fiscal years, it's hard to know what year's money we really have available to spend because some of it overlaps into a subsequent
And
fiscal year.
And this kind of, Brenda was at the meeting when you brought this up. And I was starting to get a little bit excited. The reason I got excited was I kept trying to find a way to show to any person, no matter what their background was in budgets, to show almost pictorially on what our budget looked like. And when you started talking about it, I'm like, oh, well, one, I knew you knew the way that I was doing the budget originally, and then we changed it from from how it was in writing to sort of meet some of the other board members' desires. But here's what I'm thinking. How about we do this? How about we talk about one, how much did, and this I think will get to the superintendents, a bucket by program area that we said, we've got this amount of money, put aside what it costs to run the shop day to day. We've got this amount of money this year that we're dedicating to programs, and X amount goes into this funding, X amount in this, and we can move them at any point, but that's what we started the year with. So we have these budget buckets that are based on program areas. And then we have how much is left from last year, and sort of that pictorial of, so anyone can see it. And then there's, what do we have left? What could, if the council wanted and a brilliant idea came and was brought, let's say somebody came in and said to Sika, I know how to take 2,500 kids and turn them from first grade reading to, a PhD student in 3 days. All right, sign me up for that. How much is that going to cost, right? Do we have that? And where, in which bucket does that fall? We could say to the council, here's, by the way, and I'm quick to always point this out to, Dr. Glenn and Commissioner Cummings. Yes, we have that money. But if you choose to spend that money today, it means that you're not going to have that money tomorrow for another really brilliant project. So if it's that good of an idea, let's go forward. It seems like really, Brent, until you got on the board, I felt like I was the only person who really knew, from the council's perspective, who really knew how much money we had. Sika, John, and Dina were great at keeping track of it. They knew, I knew. And Dr. Glenn, I remember when she was chair, she'd always look at me and she'd say, well, you told me we have money. And I'm like, well, okay. So I would love to find a way that we don't need to do a huge budget report every time, but somewhere in the council's packet, there is a picture of what their bank account looks like, and what are we spending? Where are we in that spending process? And that's when you talked about the variance. I was just like, it will show in picture almost.
And I think the other part of it, from my perspective, in looking at what I've heard different members of the community ask me, is they're looking at just not dollar investments. They're not spending the impact. So it's dollar investment and impact. And they don't want me to spend 30 minutes explaining it. So
Right. And
they
then
want the elevator speech that translates to value in their tax assessment.
right, and then the other, and to complement what you're saying is for our public to understand that we just started priority investments in 2023. So we just hit a full year of some of those investments. So if you remember, we had given I call it a Gantt chart of when we invested so that we could see in those first reportings that we're gonna come back in. But to your point, we will sit down and come up with a draft of what we think, and Brent, Brent, I'm sorry.
That's my name.
Mr. Johnson.
That's my name.
Welcome the opportunity to figure out which way is best to be able to show that. When we did our strategic planning, Mr. Mitchell will remember, we put up there the total investment and where they all fell. And so to your point, we are going to do that again, but we're going to keep it up there and update it as you all make those approvals. so that so that you have a visual of what we've done and in which of the priority areas. And then create something that is given to you every month so you can see.
The point that you're making though is what are the results? I mean, it's good to see the buckets and
Right.
from just a number standpoint, that makes me happy. But you're right, that is what the community is clamoring. Okay, great, you can show us, we spent $4 million in early learning. Show us where it's making the difference. It is gonna, I hate saying it, believe me, I cringe when I say, could you just give us a little more time? Because I know you
Yeah.
feel like you've spent a lot of money and we have, but here's what's actually gone out the door. And we spend money with the, whatever the Florida CSC Trust group is to buy their software that will help answer those questions. So here are the deliverables. It is a point that both you and Simone have brought up, and it's coming from the community. Like, yeah, this feels good. We have a Children's Services Council, and we have this money. What difference is it making?
So we'll have our first impact report ready to present to the community in February. And our plan is to do that impact report since inception. After that, it will be a report that's done yearly. But as you can imagine, we had to, kind of ramp up. So we want to show from summer 22 to end of fiscal year 24, what the impacts have been, and then have that done on a yearly basis. Statute does require that we report to the county commission by January 1. So we do a yearly report of what we've spent, where it's been spent, what those outcomes, and I'm just gonna say outcomes, but it's really outputs have been, what the council has prioritized for the next year, and what our approved budget has been. Now, of course, by the time they get it, January 1, we're already 1 quarter into the fiscal year, but we just do that. It's just a simple little thing. What we're talking about is an impact report that allows the public to be able to see, here is the theory of change, here are the priorities, here are the impact areas, here's where the investments have been, and this is what the initial results have been, because as we've tried to say, it's gonna take that consistent investment to really move the needle, but we do have some good things that we've done.
Yeah, I do. I think as December 31st is coming up and my term expires, I go back to when, the governor first made the appointments, and I'm like, okay, what do we have to show for it, right? And it's different than joining a board that's 20 years old. And I give myself a pass on that. I want to make sure that I've sat on boards in my life where people spend a lot of time patting themselves on the back about what a great job they're doing. And I sit there and I'm like, really? Because I don't feel that good about it. I feel good about starting an organization, getting it up and running, beginning to becoming a true participant in the community. I think we've done that well. I don't think we've done enough, but it's still so early, well, as it relates to the policies that picking the areas that we want to address. I think we've done well. I just don't know that we've mastered finding the best way to move the needle. But I think that is a work in progress. And heck, if anybody had the perfect answer for every community, we would have done it long before this. But I think we have to be willing to acknowledge that publicly.
Agree.
Because you tell people, oh, we're doing great things. So really, because I'm not sensing it, and I'd much rather just have an honest conversation with the community and say, we take very seriously the responsibility that you've entrusted us with. We are watching your dollars and we're not just spending them to spend them. And we have tightened our belt every way we can. So we have some good parts to tell, and we're a work in progress. So, okay, I'm sorry.
Your turn.
Like,
I saw him put his items away, so I'm like, are we going?
No. Like John Briggs.
No, it's fine. Okay, so what you have before you on the spreadsheet is an attempt to do exactly what these gentlemen are referencing, is to be able to show what has been invested thus far, what has been approved and awarded by the council versus what has actually been dispersed out to our community partners. And in essence, what is left in the bucket as unspent funds, so that the council can then make a determination as to if they would want to make any changes as to how to move forward with that funding. Mr. Johnson, to your point, if you look at the very first column, it's outlining the priorities. So it actually does show on there, based on our priorities here, where the specific investments are impacting, as far as the funding is concerned. So I can walk you briefly through them. It starts with our summer 23. If you look at the first column, it basically shows the allocation that was made when that budget was initially approved. So you're looking at that budget started with 1.6 million. When the council actually awarded, once the application procurements all came through, they awarded 1.692 million. So it went a little bit over. It was all dispersed based in accordance to what was awarded by the council. And with funding coming back due to unspent funds, due to the community partners not utilizing everything that was awarded to them, that $92,783 is the money that was returned to CSC Leon. For this particular summer, it does not include the funding that would have been returned from Scientia, because that has not been recouped as of yet. So that would be actually money that was returned to us. You go further down, you'll be able to see for summer 2024 that the allocated amount on the budget was 1.750 million. And what the council awarded at that point in summer enrichment was 1.64 million. Additionally to that, there was a youth internship program that was started in summer of 24. Yes, it was this year.
This is the first year.
Yes, this first year was fiscal year 23-24.
Yep.
And there was also programming for special needs that was started in summer of 24. So that in and of itself was going over what was initially budgeted by the council at the 1.7, because the breakdown for that was supposed to be, to start off, 1.4 million, give or take, for summer enrichment and 250 for the youth internship program. So that shows you a little bit of how the council determined the awards went a little bit higher than that. When you look at the 96,000, that is the funding that has been returned to CSC Leon. Again, funds that were not utilized to the entirety by all of the community partners that were awarded. If you keep going down, it'll be the same for all the other reportings that are here. For family resource, the actual initial award was the 4 million. To date, with the initial contract and the expansion that was approved in October of this year, the award comes to the 1.16. And what has been dispersed thus far is the 609, leaving at the end what is still funding to be utilized that has been earmarked for this programming, but it's still in CSC's, I guess, account until it gets dispersed. Yes.
But the commitment that we've made on family resource centers, as I recall, was that 1.106.
Yes.
And what does that, what period does that take us through? I just don't remember.
September 30th of 2025.
And that covers here and Fort Braden
Yes.
Yes. And
some exploratory work.
yeah,
Okay, got it.
I got one question. As I'm looking, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly, because if you look at family resource centers, So 4,000 was actually, I wanna say, it's not really awarded, it's more set aside.
Yeah, that's what I was
It was
talking about, 4
approved to
million.
be
you're talking
set aside.
Right.
So that is why this balance over under balance and carry forward doesn't say 2.8.
Right.
So I just wanna make that clear.
Didn't make any contractual commitment to that.
It has no, so
They
the
made
2.8,
commitments for
right,
1,106.
you got it, right.
And if I may, that carry forward is strictly based off of what the council has currently awarded. So that would be the difference between the 1.1 million
Yeah.
and what has actually been dispersed. So that's your difference right there of what has been awarded to them, but not yet dispersed. So we could add a column, and this is where your input and feedback will be greatly appreciated. That'll show what's actually still left out of the 4 billion in this case that has yet to be awarded at this point.
Yeah.
And the only thing I was gonna add was for the 4 million in the original allocation, encumberment, however you wanna call it, it was to go through September of 26
Right.
originally. So in terms of that bucket.
So I am, if I may, I would like to request that we have the column that looks at the money that has not been
Yeah, because
contracted, because that, I believe, is what the council would wanna see.
that and they can say, oh, yeah, but there's $8 million there. Yeah, there is, but let me also say that kind of to Ollie's point, you're welcome to spend that, but that means then that the contract that you have with the Children's Home Society that would extend to 2026, and there is no commitment to it, so we have no legal obligation. But if that is something you want to do, then you better subtract from the 8 million or whatever the number is. No, I mean, the whatever balance we have of all programs across everything, there's going to be money that's available. It's not contracted. It was contemplated that we would spend it in one particular category for one particular thing, and we can change our mind. There's nothing that obligates us, unlike, a legislative process. We have that ability to be nimble. But it's important that they also recognize that it is contemplated that that pot of money, while not contracted, would be used to continue successful programs. Let's just say that the FRC is one of those.
We will make sure to make the revision to include that column that shows what has yet to be awarded based on the initial allocations for that. And so as you continue to go down, it's in essence the same process with regards to what has been awarded. I will point out for you mentoring specifically, that is the one program that has closed. The first award of it was through September 30th of this year. And so right now, what you have here showing as returned funding of the 22,479 would have been for that initial contract period from August of 23 to September 30th of 24. And that is funding from one entity that reduced their budget because they recognized they were not going to spend it all within that year, and an entity that exited the contract. So there are those circumstances as well when it comes to funds that are returned to CSC. I do want to make a point on the the SIPs, Small Investments for Program Success. That was an oversight on my part, so I apologize for that if you're looking at making that add up. I left on here that the budget allocation was 900,000. However, when we did our budget amendment in May, that was reduced to 300,000 because the other 300,000 were reallocated where we had overspent or allocated into the summer special needs. And so that should actually be the 600,000 with only, I need better glasses.
Yeah, so the 900,000 should be 600,000.
Yes, so I will make sure
And then
to
we
revise that moving forward, but that would be just, I kept it all there without taking into account until afterwards that that had been reduced in May of this year based on what had been spent thus far.
Cause it started at, I just wanna be, it started at 600,000, not 900,000.
Correct.
I make one comment on the funding returned unspent. Sometimes the money never goes to the program, to the client, okay? So if you try to match that with the returned money, they're not going to match. So it might even be two columns. One returned and one that was never,
sent out.
Never dispersed.
right.
And that
Those
will
are
be, I'm so sorry.
anomalies to be worked out. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of think though that it still can stay as, we just need
Okay.
to call that one column different. It's essentially money that wasn't spent.
Okay,
And unless it's like scientific, it's made it never either left our account or it's made it back into the
Right.
account. Again, I don't, the fewer columns,
right.
trust me, this one, the fewer the better.
To Mr. Grayson's point, that is the case for family strengthening parent education. We had two programs that, one program, I apologize, that exited. And so out of that 1,164,000, there will be, if everything else is dispersed, there will be 88,000 left in that bucket because that was the balance from that contract that
And it never got dispersed to begin with.
Yes, sir. Next.
I'm curious, the internship program for 250,000, how many kids went through that?
41 completed. We budgeted for 60, but we didn't recruit enough businesses and kids to match.
So we spent how much money on 41 kids?
153,771.
Okay.
So 41 kids, and we've just been notified that 9 have now been hired by their placements.
Right.
So exciting. Sorry, I'm pretty good at that.
It's still a lot of money. I mean,
They felt the void.
This was not a process.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That was, most of them were at businesses, and that included some
I
business
remember
like
that,
as well.
you know, okay.
So go ahead.
And just one the point that I wanted to make, and I appreciate any feedback and input on that. This is, for the most part, how I'll track the disbursement. So this is to current. So it will not match, and I'm not sure if that's the math that you were doing. It will not match to the September 30th because this is what's been dispersed all the way through November. So at this point, if I need to just reflect what runs with that current financial month, then by all means, let me know. I can do that, but this just shows what's been dispersed year to date.
Yes.
For me, this is all I need.
Okay.
But I don't want to speak for you. I just,
This is helpful and directionally correct. I'm just trying to figure out when I've made an award and take family resource centers, the council made a $1.106 million award. We've spent 609 thus far. Really, then that 496 is still a liability that the council has.
yes.
Of the 1.1.
You're saying it's encumbered. We've already made a commitment to that.
We've made a contractual
Right.
commitment. We've given staff the authorization to contract with Children's Home Society for 1.1 million. They've spent 609 of that. We have a liability of 496, 692, and that liability doesn't show up in our balance sheet.
I see what okay.
So the 496 is the liability, but the balance from the 4 million minus the 1.1
Is
is
what's showing in the balance sheet.
unencumbered.
Yeah,
I mean, it's encumbered and
that
not
is,
encumbered.
it isn't encumbered. It
A
was,
verbal commitment.
it was contemplated by the board now almost 2 years ago that we would spend $4 million on a family resource center.
But
Leaving it, and which is how Sika has been doing it, not a bad idea, but if suddenly our direction changes and we don't want all of that 4 million, or we want to raise it, to Brent's point, the only numbers that really matter are that which are contracted and that which has still not gone out the door.
Mr. Johnson, let me make sure I'm hearing you right. When the council approves funding, 1.106 for family resource services, I put that on the liability right then. And as it goes out, I start subtracting from that.
I believe so.
Okay.
That would be one, but a trust but verify with the auditors on it, but in
We'll
my
have that
mind,
meeting.
we have a contractual obligation on that. There probably are some ways that I think there's termination provisions in those agreements.
Right.
So they may disagree that it meets the definition of a true liability, but at least from a council member's perspective,
Well,
it gives us a way to track.
I follow you, but my concern is this: if it's on the balance sheet, that bottom piece of those program expenditures on the profit and loss, we can't have it both ways. Do you follow me? I'm gonna be
Well, the
reduced.
debit, you're not gonna accrue the full amount as an expense. I haven't thought through what that it may be, and this is a conversation with the auditors, it may be showing some of your equity as it's showing all as unrestricted.
Okay.
It's not all unrestricted. We've made contractual commitments.
Okay, very good. We'll work it out.
Yeah, thank you.
But that satisfies the auditors from a pure accounting standpoint. But for the council members, and this is where it kind of got a little bit crazy, was trying to show them really to the superintendent's question.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Okay, so what do we have left? And it's like, well, I mean, I can make an argument. You have zero left or you've got plenty left. The $4 million is the easiest one to use as an example because, again, 2 years ago, we said Family Resource Center, we're all about it. Or 1 year, 9 months ago, whatever it was that we finally put that $4 million aside for, and approved that budget. Again, the 1.1 million of which we spent 600,000, leaving a $500,000 balance, those are all good columns to have. I don't want to lose track of the fact that the council told the public that we contemplate spending 4 million. So I'm not saying ignore the 4 million, don't show it anywhere. I just don't want to show it on a balance sheet because I want to show it as to the council members as that's your money to spend. Oh, by the way, before you go jumping into the pool with what looks like a whole bunch of cash, here is what you contemplated 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago that money should be used for.
And I think I figured out how to do it, and we'll talk about it offline.
Okay.
I figured out how to do it.
In my head, I'm at the spending plan and the budgeted versus, but
I am too.
but it can't be complicated like that.
That's too complicated. I think the way we do it is using the budget template, and we'll run this by you all, but I think it's using the budget template we use to budget, and you know how we show in their columns.
Yeah.
I think there is a way we can show every program, the awarded amount, the amount out the door, which would leave this. And we show that that's awarded and contractually we're obligated unless something happens versus the money that's just.
Yeah,
So at any
versus-
point,
Versus, let's just say it was 1 million.
right,
Versus the $3 million that has not been contracted, it was just contemplated when we
right.
had to throw a number up against the wall for Family Resource Center, so we threw 4 million. We still have $3 million left. We can dedicate that, we can continue to dedicate it all. We can raise that depending on the success of it. But that $3 million is still available to the council members if they choose that $3 million.
And by the way, it's gaining interest.
Believe me, if you think that's lost on me, think again. Okay, so.
Thank you.
So I think, I know we're not taking any votes, but so that gets to the variance, meeting schedule frequency. I'll meet as often as you will, or as often as you would like. How are the council meetings running? It's every other month, right?
So the council meetings are running, it's hard to describe, are running twice a quarter, the first month of the quarter, the last month of the quarter. So October, December, January, March, April, June, July, September. So that we give a month break in between. So as a suggestion, we could do budget and finance once a quarter. We could do it twice a quarter. I will say from our perspective, I don't know that monthly would be very prudent.
I mean, I would love to see you monthly, but no.
But definitely once a quarter, I'm thinking, and then I think we've been trying to figure out what is the timing? Is it the first month of the quarter or the last month of the quarter right before the council meeting?
So here's the thing, I think if we do it quarterly and we can figure out which month, it is fine. But I also think we need another meeting that has nothing to do with just a quick financial, like they shouldn't, they won't take very long in the future. The one that will take long, which I think needs to be the fifth one, is the budget. As we're putting the budget together, the finance committee really needs to say, we're ready to dedicate, roll up our sleeves, take time to do
So
it.
that would be second quarter. So that would be
So
April, May, June.
yeah, I mean, look, I like it when it's sort of fresh on my mind going into a full council meeting. But the nice thing is with 4 of us on the finance committee and only 10 on the board, you've got 40% who've already heard it. And so you're really leaving it, unless there's some exceptional item that needs to be brought up, you're just leaving it on the consent agenda, or somebody can, pull it off and ask a question. But 4 of the 10 have already heard it. And of the 10, you have the chair, the treasurer, a CPA, and the superintendent. I'd say we're rocking. So I don't care. Do it how it works best.
So we'll send out something to the committee members to see which you want to do.
Okay,
And then,
just know it, recognizing there's 2 elected officials on it.
yes,
I want to be sensitive to both the superintendent and the chair's schedule.
so it will be on a Thursday.
And then
I can
Mr.
tell you
Johnson.
that, and it won't be on the first, third, we'll do it.
The one question I had is, regardless of the frequency for the publicly noticed meetings like this, do you have to notice if you send committee members interim packets? Like, I don't mind getting monthly financials.
No, we don't. We have been sending those just to Mr. Mitchell. We can send them to the entire committee.
We just don't reply at all.
And so that's why I blind copy you all. So if you accidentally hit reply all, it only comes back to me.
Okay,
So we can absolutely do that.
I think that, the other members of the committee need to get that option of receiving those financials, if that's okay with you.
I think it's fantastic. And I know that one will know it as well as I do it. And that makes me feel so comfortable. All right.
And during that time, if you've got a question, you can email me directly, no? Yeah.
Sure.
So that way we cut down on some of the.
Yeah.
Give me a chance to already answer the question and straighten it out before we get here.
And if you copy Dina or me, whichever one, that just so that we can make sure that it
Public
is.
record.
I
I
don't-
was trying, like,
Yeah.
Don't copy
Okay,
the
Right.
other council members.
Please make sure.
So the next meeting date, I'm gonna leave a little bit open while
Yes.
you look that up. The next meeting agenda, we'll talk about we'll go through what we did today, just very quickly, because you now know all the categories. We'll go through any anomalies that we need to talk about. We'll also have whatever your representation is. However, you guys have heard what we've said and want to put it, and any other items that may come up. And again, we're not voting on anything, but I can ask for any, Mr. Jones, any comments?
He left.
Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, anything?
I have none. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Gregson, my only comment is thank you very much and I appreciate you all. With the motion to adjourn by Mr. Johnson and no objection,